The reports indicate that Indiana's prison population has grown 40% over the past decade, and it's growing at a faster rate than neighboring states. Does that represent a flaw in our prison system, or really is that just a reflection of what most Hoosiers would want?
Well, I can't speak to what most Hoosiers would want. What I would say is that our prison population is growing significantly higher than anybody else in the nation for the most part. 2 years ago, Pew did a study. Indiana's prison population percentage was the highest rising in the entire nation. What I think it's one of the driving factors is the fact that we have not looked at the entire criminal justice system in 33 years. Not since 1977 have we looked at the entire penal code. Other states have. And because of that, what we have now is we have not an Indiana criminal justice system, but a collection of laws. In the last 10 years, there have been 117 new laws or enhancements added to the penal code. At the same time, there hasn't been any reduction in any sentencing. So therefore, you have a lot of laws, a lot of opportunities for people to get locked up. Other states have made adjustments. They're putting more resources in community corrections and other type of deferral programs as opposed to using incarceration kind of for the answer for everything.
You would agree, I guess, that there's been no public outcry for these kinds of changes.
I believe the reports have brought a lot of things to our attention. Obviously, Governor Daniels did not see any downside to having a kind of a scientific, data-driven analysis and look of where Indiana stood as opposed to the rest of the country. But having said that, in the last few months, the Pew and Council of State Government report have shown us that for crimes that we have, for say Class A felonies, the highest classification code for a felony, other states would give you as little as probation next to us, Ohio. For instance, selling 3 grams of cocaine, you could get up to 50 years in prison in Indiana. You could get probation for that in Ohio. You could get 2 to 20 years in Texas. Yes, we are a conservative state, but the leaders across the nation for sentencing reform who've worked with the Council of State Government and Pew have been other conservative states. Texas, Kansas, South Carolina. These states have kind of led this movement for looking closely at sentencing reform. I got to believe a lot of it could be driven by economics. People just don't want to put all their money into incarceration and into criminal justice systems. They want to look at funding for school systems and other social services. So what's happening now is a cost-benefit analysis is actually for the first time being applied to the criminal justice system. And what we're finding in Indiana is we're not getting the best bang for our buck. We could be utilizing other programs in communities, keeping offenders in communities, getting them substance abuse, getting them other treatment, as opposed to locking them up and putting everybody in prison.
You would argue that we're locking up too many drug offenders and nonviolent offenders. But if we enact these kinds of changes, do we run the risk of looking like we're soft on crime?
I don't believe so. Unless you believe that Hoosiers have some criminal gene that we commit crimes that are rated higher than anybody in the nation. I kind of think Hoosiers are good people. Even if we enact these reforms, our drug crime laws will still be 5 times tougher than Ohio's, our neighbor. Right now they're 10 times tougher. They'll still be many times higher than Michigan, Kentucky, Illinois, and Wisconsin as well. And other states, even more conservative states who have went through sentencing reform like Texas and Kansas.
It's well established, I believe, that drug offenders often commit property crimes, sometimes even violent crimes to support their addictions. Doesn't public safety suffer if these folks aren't locked up for their missteps?
No, that's an excellent point though. We did a study in Department of Correction ourselves. 85% of all offenders are incarcerated have a substance abuse issue. In other words, their crime might not be drugs, but they committed a murder while they were feeding a habit, an addiction, or they were intoxicated or high at some point. Absolutely not. What we've seen and what Texas especially have seen is went through sentencing reform. If you get drug treatment on the front end, these people won't commit crimes again. I submit to you that drug treatment is good public safety policy. Getting offenders while they're incarcerated, getting them job skills is good public safety policy because they're going to be less likely, the data shows, to recidivate, to commit more crimes. So if we think of it like adults, we'll get justice because they'll be confined, they'll be in prison. But while they're in prison, if we have evidence-based programs that set them up for success when they get out, we all will benefit in terms of Hoosier communities.
What's the one thing you'd like to see the legislature accomplish as it relates to prison reform?
We got to have graduated sanctions for drug crimes. We can't have drug crimes that, say for 3 grams, selling of 3 grams of cocaine, you get a Class A felony like you would if you had a truckload of cocaine. You have to graduate the sanctions so the crime or the punishment fits the crime actually. Theft. We are the only state in the nation that doesn't have misdemeanor theft. If you steal something for $1 in a theft charge, you get a felony for that. Every other state has a threshold. In other words, the average in the nation is almost $700. You have to steal something of value for $700 before it's a felony. Not in Indiana. Indiana has no misdemeanor theft. You steal something for $1, you get a Class D felony. If you steal something for $99,000, you get a felony. What this causes is a great disparity from county to county. And again, we don't have an Indiana criminal justice system because the laws aren't graduated, the sentences and sanctions are such that there's a wide disparity on how much time you might get depending on what county you live in.
Do you honestly believe that Indiana confronts the likelihood of having to shell out an extra $1 billion if these changes aren't made?
But that's exactly what's going to happen if we don't. We have sort of doubled down on the sentencing reform package. If it doesn't pass, we are going to have to start building prisons, and we're going to have to start building them yesterday.
The year is 2020. If the sentencing guidelines are changed, can you describe what you see Indiana's prison system looking like, or maybe more specifically, what you see Indiana's prison population looking like?
It's going to stabilize. By 2017, the prison population will start to incrementally go up again. Hopefully it won't go up to what it is now, 4% or roughly 1,000 a year. But by 2017, we will see modest growth to only 3,000 offenders. By 2020, it may, hopefully, they'll look at the entire penal code again. They'll look at where we are kind of from evidence-based, an evidence-based approach to see where we are. And quite possibly, the prison population will continue to grow to probably 15 or 16,000 more than what we've seen today.
The Pew proposal would likely place significant new responsibilities, maybe even new demands on local correctional systems. Who pays for that?
We actually, as part of our justice reinvestment, those counties who invest in substance abuse treatment programs, especially, they will get money back. If they divert the D felons, the low-risk felons, keep them in the communities, we will help them pay for whatever programs they adopt.
Can the local jails, community corrections programs, work release programs stand up under the additional pressures that they would be placed under?
Well, it'll be up to the counties. As they divert, they'll get more funding from DOC as they divert people from coming to prison. I guess if they get to a point where they can't house any more offenders in their community correction centers and their jails, then those offenders will come to the DOC or we'll utilize other local jails.
Have we been asleep at the wheel for 30 years, or what explanation would you give for how we find ourselves in this position today?
We haven't looked at the entire criminal justice system. It shouldn't have took 33 years to look at the penal code, the entire penal code. The fact that we've continued to add on more laws has put us in the situation where we're at today. The fact that we're the only state in the nation that doesn't have misdemeanor theft, I mean, that's significant. That should raise lights for everybody to look real closely at. Why is Indiana the only state that doesn't have misdemeanor theft? Why is Indiana the only state in the area that doesn't have graduated sanctions for crimes such as substance abuse and possession of narcotics? And that's why we're here today.
If there's an overhaul of the sentencing guidelines, will people currently locked up, will some be let out of jail?
No, it won't be affected. There'll be nobody will be released. It will all be new sentences. People who commit new crimes will be affected by this.
You're leaving for a new job in Florida. Is the timing of that coincidental, or do you prefer the new set of challenges you'll face there versus the challenges that are coming for Indiana?
There was a changeover. This is the year that more governors have changed over in recent memory. Florida is the 3rd largest jurisdiction in the country. It's kind of an elite group of commissioners. There's only 50 jobs. If I didn't go to Florida this year, probably the job wouldn't be open for at least 4 years, maybe even 8 years or longer. This is the right job, the right place, and an opportunity. I do not want to leave Indiana. I'm sure I will return to Indiana, but this was an opportunity that I could not pass up. And Florida has similar challenge to Indiana had nearly 3 years ago when I took this job. So it's a tremendous opportunity.